Good afternoon and welcome to the Design Leaders podcast. Every day I speak with candidates looking to grow in the world of design, development and construction. I also speak with market leaders at the peak of their career who regularly talk about mentorship and helping the next generation of leaders in their development. This podcast is for those people hoping to learn about what the next step in their career could look like. Today, I'm here with Jenna Knudsen and Alex Korter, Managing Principal and Principal of Co-Architects, respectively. Jenna has been a long-time advocate for equal representation to support and encourage women in architecture. Alex leads the firm's Building Facades group and has experience in both the US and Europe. As leaders in the healthcare and academic space, I knew I wanted Co to be a part of this series. So Jenna and Alex, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you.
No problem. I usually start these series and these episodes the same. So if you wouldn't mind, the two of you telling me a little bit more about how you both got your first start in design.
Sure, I can start. I grew up in California in the Central Valley. I come from a large Greek family. My grandfather owned a grocery store where everybody in my family worked. He was my first employer. But as a child, I spent a lot of time there waiting for my mom, and they used to sell these magazines of spec homes, and I used to love to look at them. My dad was in real estate, so I really had a fascination with plans and building and drawing. But I think my greatest interest was trying to find a house that was large enough to have a bedroom for everybody in my family, or at least that I could have my own bedroom. And I couldn't find them, so I modified the drawings and I would draw them. And people would see me doing this and say, "Oh, you must want to be an architect." I didn't know any architects really at that time, nor really understood what it meant. But as I kind of grew up and had that in my mind, then architecture became an ideal career path for me. I went on to get my degree at USC, and then actually came to work at Co-Architects, which was Anshin and Allen, Los Angeles at the time, after my undergraduate degree. I left for a little bit, went to New York, got a master's, worked there for a little bit, but have spent the majority of my career at Co-Architects.
And Alex?
I'll go next. Yeah. Was born and raised in Belgium. And have two uncles that are architects, actually. But I always liked making things. Even when I was a kid playing, I just brought mud and dirt and sand into my room to sort of make things and build things to play with. But then through school, I realized that I was interested in a multitude of things. I liked geography a lot. I liked math. I liked physics. I liked art. So I didn't really know which way to go. And architecture hits on all of those. So this sort of diversity of subject matter was really something that attracted me to it. So I didn't really have a question as to what I wanted to study. I just went for it. I didn't really know what it entailed. I didn't really know what it took. But I had to learn very quickly. So I went to study then an area that you're familiar with, Jakey, in Manchester, in north of England. Spent my undergrad there, and then actually did an internship in the States in Minneapolis, went back to graduate school at the Glasgow School of Art, and then started my career working in London. And spent 5 years there, and then moved to sunny Los Angeles now 19 years ago to start working at Co.
Interesting. It's always a family affair, right, guys? And Jenna, I reckon, with a father in real estate, was probably very proud to step into the architecture world. And Alex, I bet your parents were very happy with you bringing mud, dirt, and sand into the house to start practicing at an early age. I imagine, Jenna, the days of you kind of in the grocery store, Alex, lots of movements kind of around the US and Europe. I imagine these are pretty key milestones. But could you both speak to some of the key milestones in your career that have helped shape your career path?
Sure. I think the first would be my final year of undergrad. I think I finally maybe started to understand my own design process a little more. Figured out what a version of architecture for me looked like, what I was there to learn. And we also did a studio project, little dark, but it was called Death in Architecture. But it really got me into doing a lot of research and really got me into design. And I feel that really got me hooked into this profession. That was sort of the moment that said, okay, this confirms that this is what I want to do, what I want to study first, and then what I want to do afterwards. I'd say the second would be coming out of school, and my first job in London was being given the opportunity to actually work on a project from very early stages all throughout. I'm a little bit more of a, call it a practical architect. Architectural theory is interesting to me, but I wanted architecture to be realized and be built and be made. And I got that experience right away in the career, and that really set a foundation that suited me very well, and that gave me the experience that I needed to then build upon that going forward.
I'll add on, maybe sort of starting when I first started working here, and the first project that I worked on at Co-Architects was a major replacement hospital for UCLA, Santa Monica UCLA, and I had no idea what it meant to work in healthcare architecture. That, as you mentioned, Jakey, in your introduction, is one of our areas of expertise, and I just really enjoyed it. It was a very complex problem. This was literally replacing a hospital that needed seismic upgrade after the 1994 earthquake, and while remaining operational the entire time. So it was not just a aesthetic design problem, but a very complex phasing problem, and understanding how's this going to affect patients and how will it affect visitors, staff, and so a thread. I don't only work on healthcare, but a thread in my career has been healthcare. I kind of always come back to that as a really important building typology that we do at Co-Architects, and a project that basically brought me back to Co-Architects that Alex and I worked on together in the early 2000s was Palomar Medical Center. And so that was another kind of foundational project that was the first project that really incorporated kind of all of evidence-based design, the idea that design can either improve or challenge healing. And it was also the first project that we took into building information modeling. And so those two projects are kind of fundamental for me in my career, and understanding kind of where my passion lies, and also understanding that I work well in really large project teams.
Interesting. As a recruiter who focuses so exclusively in healthcare and academic, the points you touched on there, Jenna, I think maybe if we had more time, I'd like to dig into a little bit more. But for anyone who's listening, I appreciate we probably can't go into the entire syllabus right now. But Alex, what is death in architecture?
So it was essentially thinking about you and your thoughts about death or the afterlife. So the design was initially a mausoleum for yourself, which is an interesting project on its own. And then the thesis project was actually designing a crematorium. So morbid, but functional and necessary. A lot of spirituality involved in that, a lot of self-thought, and I think that is something that at the time I related to, also due to sort of personal circumstances, my father going through cancer treatment and all that. There was a lot going on, and it's just something that was an immediate emotional connection, but also a sort of architectural connection. That, like I said, just confirmed that I was in the right field and doing the right thing, enjoying what I was doing, and so that's kind of what hooked it in.
Interesting. I think, the uniqueness and the nicheness of that sort of project, that syllabus, is not totally dissimilar from the idea of, healthcare, academic sciences, health sciences, education, niche and very, very specific within the market. Not quite the same projects, obviously, but interesting. And then, I'd like to learn a little bit more about Co and the growth trajectory, what two better people, managing principal and principal, to discuss. So, if you could both tell me a little bit more about Co and the growth trajectory moving forward.
Sure, I'll start, and I'm sure Alex will have some to add. So Co-Architects, we have two offices, a main office in Los Angeles, where we have been for, I think, going on 38 years, and a smaller office in San Diego. So all in Southern California. However, we work all over the country from those two offices. As we've talked about a little bit, our work tends to be in healthcare, in science and technology, and in the health sciences education. We also have a part of our practice that does K through 12, some civic work, and some kind of other, mostly institutional based projects. And so those are the markets that we live in. We are a little bit over 150 employees, and that's been a significant growth, largely in, we've obviously been growing for a number of years, but we grew about 30% since 2020. So during the 2 years of a COVID lockdown in California, where we were working entirely remotely, we grew pretty significantly. We had some major project wins, and so that was interesting and fun at the same time, and we felt blessed to be growing and doing good work. I think it's important to just talk about that growth is not for the sake of growth. We don't have a revenue that we want to hit per se, or a number of employees. What we want is to work for the best clients, and kind of do the projects that we want to do, have the capacity to do that, and be able to continue to expand our knowledge and our expertise to support the clients, our current clients, to support new clients that we feel would be a good match for us, and to provide opportunities for our employees. So growth creates those opportunities, and that's, I think, kind of where the interest lies. What would you add, Alex?
Yeah, I think it's building on our sort of core knowledge, applying that, like we said, either to existing clients or new clients, but also not being shy about applying knowledge elsewhere to typologies that maybe we're less familiar with, but know that having done other projects, knowing the process, we could contribute, we could be innovative, we could learn new things, and as Jenna mentioned, provide opportunities for our staff to maybe apply their knowledge and sort of grow into different roles. So it's expanding also the knowledge, the client base. It can be expanding location too. Obviously, geographical expansion is important too. But at the same time, it's also expanding and growing in our scope of services. What type of services do architects provide to clients? It is not always sort of program design, build. There are other services in strategic thinking, in sort of strategic approach, long-term goals, where we can support clients early on to start to set things in motion. And I think diversifying those scope of services that architects can bring, I think, is also an area of growth that we're interested in.
I think something important to note there is, I asked that question on almost all these episodes, and both of you spoke about supporting and uplifting the wider staff there, and I think from two leaders of the firm, I think that speaks volumes to perhaps the culture of the firm as well, and the culture of the two of you, which naturally segues nicely into my next question. And I think we are touching on a few of the big important points here in regards to your robust sectors and culture and fantastic work. But what do you guys feel sets Co apart from others and other competitors in the industry?
You want me to, you want to start with
I'll
people or
start.
not?
Yeah. So, I mean, since I, ended there, but I think I'll cover people because that's my realm a little bit. Just, as Jenna, we've sort of been sort of tracking our careers quite closely. So when Jenna came back to Co, when I moved over from London, we started on the project together. And so Jenna becoming managing principal of Co-Architects allowed me to sort of dive into, call it our resource management or hiring or staffing, more of our people focused, strategies. And so I think this providing opportunities for growth is at the center of everything. I mean, we hire for the long term. We want people to flourish, to grow, to learn, and to bring their own identity, their own sort of creativity to the practice, to the culture, and to the projects. I think it's a conversation that we have a lot with people, is to make sure that they understand that they are the future of Co. There is not a path that's been set in stone. The path will be theirs eventually. They contribute to this, and that can be demanding. I mean, that we're somewhat, opportunistic, but also demanding at the same time, because it takes initiative, and that's something we request. We also look at the way we structure our teams, the way roles are defined, sometimes harder to understand because they are not sort of strictly defined. It is very much based on somebody's expertise, interest, but also ability to deal with different responsibilities. And then we also want to pool on expertise that employees might bring from their previous job, their previous life, something they have project typology they've worked on in the past, and they can bring that to projects. So it's really this sort of culture of really collaborating, making sure we instill this idea of continuous improvement, that we're always learning. I mean, that's part of the reason I got into architecture, is that you'll never know everything. Every project is different. Every project is new. Even if it was, has some similarities, there'll be something different every single time. And that's, I think, what keeps us coming back for more.
I mean, Alex talked about kind of our people, and I think what we look for in terms of those working on the projects. I think from a perspective of the kind of clients we work with, or maybe why they would hire, why they would come to Co-Architects is, I mean, first we've talked about an expertise. So obviously we have a deep expertise in a number of kind of very specific project types. Within that, we have experts. So we have, healthcare planners and laboratory planners and interiors and so environmental graphics. So, we can kind of do the design work that is all encompassing within those projects. And so, I think that's important just in terms of a kind of expertise and what we can export nationally. So, a health sciences education project, a School of Medicine, for example, on the East Coast, that's a project that, that we can bring in expertise from having done those types of buildings and understanding the trends for those types of projects. I think along with the kinds of projects that we do, comes a specific client, a client type that tends to be very broad. There's rarely one person who says, this is the answer and do this. It's pretty consensus based, which we are as well. So, sometimes there's people start to look like their dogs. Architects look like their clients. And so, there is a kind of ability to navigate the client that is multi-layered, is complex. It's often, if you're talking about a healthcare client, it's multiple departments, it's doctors, it's nurses, it's administrators. If you're talking about a college or university, it might be multiple colleges within one university, or what we're seeing much more frequently is multiple universities or multiple institutions, a university, a developer coming together to do a project. And so in that, there's a lot of complexity to navigate. And I think we're pretty good at that. We've developed tools and processes to really figure out, how can we communicate ideas? How can we listen and gather input and then help sort of drive to a vision and a best decision?
In these episodes, guys, I'm always interested to hear kind of the different sayings. Obviously, Alex, I think you touched on there. I'm from Manchester, so we have our different sayings. I think the idea that architects start to look like their clients is not one that I've heard before, but I do like a lot. I think I'll be using it in the future. Moving on from there, guys, obviously, with what you said before about, since 2020, increasing around 30% in headcount, particularly in this post-COVID world of a lot of people moving online, how have you been able to foster that culture of, a solid culture of innovation, creativity, collaboration amongst those in the different offices in the organization?
I mean, I think to start off, it's something that continuously evolves, and it's something that we keep working on as we go forward. So I think that's something to be clear. Something culture needs to be evolving, changing, and needs to be worked on and fostered. I mean, co, right? The reason we're named co is means together with, jointly, equally, right? So there are a lot of co words, collaborate being one of them. But that's sort of at the heart of our sort of DNA in terms of how we interact with each other, how we interact as a practice, how we interact on projects, how we interact with clients, consultants, builders, and occupants. We want to be there. We want to build and work as a team, and have everybody have sort of their input and ownership of what a facility, a building turns out to be. The way we foster it, I think, is through that improvement. That continuous improvement needs to come with knowledge sharing, with having mentors and people share what they're doing all the time, with giving staff support systems, tools, both formal and informal, to sort of learn from others, to learn by doing mistakes or by making mistakes, but to learn to also overcome challenges and really excel at what they do. We have a lot of programs which are all staff sort of started, or most of them are sort of initiatives that come from staff. We have something called Co-Fundamentals, which is geared towards young designers. So these are half-hour sessions every Tuesday morning, and they go from marketing to design to construction to technical aspects, just to give young designers a picture of what an architectural career and role and responsibilities look like. We do what we call coincide. So, we're riffing on our a lot. We use it for branding. But that is, we do our own lunchtime presentations. We get them AIA accredited, and they go from nuts and bolts issues to very broad discussions about design. But again, it's sharing what people are doing. We need to make sure we kind of encourage that cross-pollination between projects, so that, project teams don't feel siloed, they feel connected. And at the same time, sort of for the more experienced, we also have a co-university. So this is, 6 or 7 different sessions. They are geared a little bit more towards the future leadership generation of co, giving tools into or insight into the finances of a practice. What does it mean to run an architectural business? What is our sort of design philosophy? So, and these are evolving things, but these are the types of things that really help us kind of support that culture, also have others contribute to that culture. And lastly, we're an office that is not studio based, so we don't organize people by typology, and these typologies are not separate revenue streams, right? So we like to place a healthcare project team next to a K through 12 school project team, next to a medical or a health sciences facility, so that those teams sit by one another, they can hear each other, they can talk to one another, and eventually the ideas cross-pollinate. And that's how also we staff projects. It's not necessarily all expertise based. Yes, you need expertise to bring a project to fruition, but we also want to bring others in so that they learn and they bring ideas from their previous typology to a different typology to start thinking about problems in a different way. So that's those are some of the things that we try and do, and we keep doing and keep working at.
Yeah, I think Alex's point that one, knowledge sharing is super important to both internally. He talked a lot about the internal programs, which are grassroots, which I think is also really critical to having ownership, right? And understanding what do people care about right now? What is important? That it's not a top-down approach of sort of assigning people to be on committees per se, but it's really trying to gather the interest and then allowing people to have their voice in those interests. And it's been that way as long as I've been here. So I think you talked a little bit about equity and inclusion. And I mean, probably 15 years ago, there was a group of us who started a group, WOCO, Women of Co. And that really was, kind of a grassroots. We should be talking more about equity, and that group has evolved and, is on its sort of fifth generation, if you will. So I think it's important, and that really kind of rolls up into this idea that we believe that we're a practice into perpetuity. Our name is Co-Architects. It's not, 5 people's last names. And so, kind of having this mindset that the current leaders are the caretakers for the next generation. So obviously that, comes along with this idea of knowledge sharing and mentorship and growing, but also, kind of reading the room and understanding what's going on in the industry right now, and what do people care about, and what do we need to be thinking about. So as Alex said, the culture, it is evolving. A few years ago, we came up with a graphic coming out of one of our partners retreats that we called the culture tree. But it was this idea that, there are roots. And so, we sort of we're built upon the roots and the history and understanding where we came from, but it's also sort of continuing to grow and evolve. And the world's changing, the world of architecture is changing. And so, how do we kind of continue to adapt and embrace that change is inevitable? So we have our, some historic traditions. We do a Thanksgiving potluck and game. We have a happy hour that we call balcony hour on Thursdays, and, kind of stop early and make a little time to connect. But also, kind of many of these things that Alex has talked about that have sort of been brought in during COVID. We started town halls. We had those weekly for probably a year. And now we've continued that with kind of a monthly check-in. So as we grow, also, we have to sort of gut check, does this still work? What do we need to change?
I love what you're both saying here. I think, after these discussions, I usually go back to our marketing team and ask them to create a few little snippets of the important pieces here. And I think my marketing team is not going to be too happy with me when I ask them to create about 7 or 8 different snippets here, whether it's the WOCO, the co-fundamentals, the Co-University, whatever it might be. What great initiatives to have in there. And I think you might hear from, as a recruiter who likes learning more about this industry and is not an architect or a designer, you might get an email from me for an invite for one of those Tuesday morning sessions. And then Jenna, you kind of starting to talk about there how to adapt, how to embrace the changing dynamics of the industry. Beautiful segue into kind of the next question there. How do we see this architecture and design industry evolving and changing? How is Co, prepared to face these changes?
Yeah, I think for sure the post-COVID workplace is very different. things are changing rapidly. And so I think for the past 2 years that we've been back in the office, we've actually been back in the office as long as we were out of the office. So that's a nice, like literally right now. In March, as long as we were, out. But I think really trying to understand what did we learn from remote work or from hybridity that brings value, kind of work-life balance, and then at the same time, people work differently, right? We have different styles of working. But at the same time, what did we miss while we were apart? And so a lot of what Alex has talked about, the co-fundamentals was really kind of a direct response to having been apart and maybe a loss of some kind of basic learning that we wanted to make sure that we brought back. I think we're excited that the types of projects we do continue to be robust, to evolve, to kind of morph and have hybridity themselves. In the kind of academic medical center space, we're seeing more projects that bring clinical and teaching and education and research sort of all together. And so I think those are great projects for us. So I think continuing to look for those opportunities. We talked about this idea of kind of the practice into perpetuity. So making sure that we are mentoring and providing opportunities for those at Co to continue to grow. And Alex could talk more about this in detail, but I think technology. We have always embraced the use of technology. In 1986, the first managing principal of this firm declared that all documents were going to be computer generated, which was pretty unheard of at the time. Sort of fast forward from there to the early 2000s, and Co was at the forefront of building information modeling. And again, it's not technology for technology's sake, but technology, how can that make us better communicators, better designers, more efficient, better collaborators with builders and clients. And so I think, that's an area that, AI, that we want to be leaders, be at the forefront of that conversation.
Yeah, I think I'll just add a couple of things, mainly also concerning the responsibility with sort of climate change. I think I'll just be harsh, but rude awakening of the architectural community. I think we're behind, and we're noticing it, and it's everywhere, and we see it, and we have a big responsibility to do much more. So I think that is something that we are distinctly, acutely aware of, and want to put steps in motion to sort of do better and keep pushing the boundaries and educating our clients as to what should be done, and taking that responsibility seriously to make sure we do the right thing for future generations. So I think that's a big key. I think also looking at evolving into sort of identifying and working with new partners. We talked about growth, but I think it's always good to sort of say, who do we align ourselves with? Who do we work with? Who do we collaborate with? I think that's always an ongoing search that makes the practice better. We rely on partner firms when we do work across the nation. So it's always refreshing to sort of find new partners and really get along and be culturally aligned to sort of do great work. I think that's where great work comes from. As Jenna mentioned, technology is a big thing. I think there's a lot, obviously, of chatter around AI and a lot of mystique around it. Our approach is first and foremost that it's a tool. There's a lot of opportunity in that. There's definitely challenges in that too, but it is a tool, and so we need to learn how to use the tool and find out about what the opportunities are. And so we're already playing with that a little bit on how can we get AI involved in our project work and inform our outcomes and maybe sort of test AI in different ways, and that perhaps AI becomes an occupant user voice that is a digital technology sort of aspect that pulls on the information that's out there, so that we hear from individuals, but we also hear from this wealth of information that's out there, and kind of consider that when we advance our designs. So those are a couple of the things that we're very obviously interested in. Our work also continues in, back to the practice in perpetuity is, I'm also excited to sort of continue to build these pipeline programs for the next generation of architects, reaching further into pre-college, pre-university, going into high schools, maybe even middle schools. I mean, I think these seeds are planted very early on, sharing the opportunities that are not just in the architectural realm, but even realms of engineering. I think it's important to give younger people a positive outlook of opportunity. I think there's a little bit of a fear at times out there as to what's my future, where do I go? Being exposed to just different ideas, different opportunities is something that we're very interested in. And tied to that, and most importantly, is also to just keep, reaching out to sort of underrepresented communities, minority communities, and really bringing that voice into our practice, into the work, is something that we believe in, and something that we will continue to work very diligently on.
Yeah, we actually host a high school. We have a high school discovery program that I think is on its 11th year. So we do host between 3 and 6 high school students each summer for I think it's 6 weeks, and it's a fairly sort of rigorous program that we expose them to the office and a job site, and they have their own projects, and everyone in the office is encouraged to contribute and and sort of be part of their learning. So that's kind of, I think, one example of.
They have a desk, they have a workstation, they have to present their work in front of others, so they really get the full idea as to what it's like to work in an architectural practice.
We don't give them a hospital project.
I think, the notion of that, when I asked the two of you about how you got your starts in design, we go way back to, early childhood, and it's usually the same case. So hopefully, if we're in the 11th year here, I imagine in 20 years, someone else is going to sit in my seat and speak with someone else and ask them very similar questions. And hopefully their touch point on their first start in design is, well, I went into co-architect's office, 20 years ago, and 20 years later, managing principal of co-architect, or something along those lines. So great initiative, that, guys. And on the AI piece, from the outside looking in, admittedly, I wasn't around when Revit and BIM were becoming kind of the norm, but it seems very much we're at an inflection point in the industry where a lot of people seem to be talking about AI as though it's going to be, the next big change, like a Revit or a BIM technology. Is that how you guys feel as well? We're coming up to that inflection point.
I do think it's an inflection point. However, there's a lot of hypothesizing, I think, which was the same when I would say, if we look back on Revit and BIM, some of what was said would happen, like we would need way less people, or buildings are gonna sort of draw themselves. That didn't happen, but other sort of really great changes did occur, and so I think we're going to see a pretty fundamental change, but I think it's really got to come from sort of within, and understanding what are we trying to achieve, as opposed to being afraid of sort of that certain things are going to be obsolete.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think we definitely don't take the skeptical, we're going to bury our head in the sand and pretend it's not happening approach. I think there is knowledge to be learned, and there's probably opportunities to be had. And I think there's probably a new tool out there that can maybe help us do less of the rudimentary stuff, but actually focus, you know, on the things that we're really good at. And you know, that's maybe one way that AI is actually going to help.
Sticking in the theme of kind of future goals, future vision, I think with you guys, you know, specifically with Co, there may be areas which you can't discuss, you know, working in the, you know, areas of healthcare, academic health sciences, S&T. You may not be able to discuss some of this, but I wonder if you could talk about any upcoming projects, exciting projects that you know, you're particularly excited about, you find particularly noteworthy.
Sure, we can talk about a few projects.
Awesome.
We have a hospital for UC Irvine, the UC Irvine Medical Center. So it's actually a new medical center in Irvine, which is the first all-electric hospital in the nation. So, you know, to kind of Alex's comments about climate change and resiliency, and so that's pretty exciting. It's a 350,000 square foot hospital and a 220,000 square foot outpatient building. The outpatient building is almost complete. The hospital opens in 2025, and so I think that is very interesting and sort of showing an opportunity to move away from natural gas in a project type that's not been done before. It's also a design build project, so it's a collaboration with Hensel Phelps. We have a number of design build projects, and so that's a delivery model that we are seeing more of, seeing ourselves, you know, being good collaborators and kind of design partners in that arena. So that's one project that's really exciting.
Mm.
Yeah, I'll add a couple more. I mean, I think balancing large nationwide projects with work in our community is something that is really important to us too. So we're doing a medical school at Charles Drew University here in LA, so just south in Compton, I think. And so that is a really important smaller project, but for a very, very important institution. And like I said, in our own community, and continuing to evolve and support our community is important. And then at the same time, we're doing a project for Wichita State University, which is in Wichita. And that's an interesting project. It's a health sciences medical school as well. But that's an educational building in downtown Wichita. So it's this sort of idea that you bring education into the urban fabric, into the urban realm. And there are some challenges with that. One, there's different responsibilities as to what a facility like that does. How do you meld the sort of civic downtown revival aspect to also still providing students with identity and a home and a center that they can sort of feel they're a part of? They're sort of interesting projects. And I think they're part of that growth as well. It's sort of even taking these typologies, putting them in different places, scaling things up, having projects that carry a little more meaning. I think that's also the type of growth that we're really interested in. And then lastly, and Jakey, your ears might perk up a little bit. You know, we're also at a scale and at a size that we really think we need to push, as I mentioned, on the sustainability resilience front. So we are going to be looking to dedicate more resource and expertise to that aspect in the practice. And so we will be looking for a director that will be leading some of those efforts and really pushing those initiatives forward, and using our expertise, our you know, the passions for sustainable design that we already have in the office, and really moving those forward and evolving those into what it needs to be for the next 10, 15, 20, 30 years.
Yeah, I mean, it's important. Alex said 10, 15, 20, 30 years. That the buildings that we do, we say they're 50 to 100 year buildings. You know, so, you know, hospitals, campus buildings, they are around for a long time. Many of them are operating 365 you know, days a year, 24/7. So there's a long life there in terms of impact both to communities, but also to the environment.
Mm. You're absolutely right, Alex. My ears did perk up. It took all my strength not to start writing some names down of people who I had in mind, but I won't just yet. I'll keep concentrating here. Guys, all of that, I think, from a professional point of view, is really interesting. I think, one thing I always like to do with these discussions is also put the person behind the professional as well. So I wonder if the two of you, outside of your work life, what hobbies, what interests do you have that contribute to your overall well-being and your creativity as an architect?
Can you start?
I can start. Yeah. I like to read. I do tend to read a lot of books on leadership. But I enjoy reading. My son is a baseball player, and he's still young. He's just about to turn 13, but a lot of travel baseball, and so I enjoy watching him play baseball. That's where I can be found on most weekends. There's also a lot of downtime, so I can send a lot of emails on the weekends as well. I just really like spending time with my good friends and family, and making sure that we're laughing and just kind of enjoying each other's company. So that's how I unwind.
Yeah, so similarly, I was telling you that Jenna and I have been tracking. So my son's 13, so we had basically our sons at roughly the same time. I mean, really close. Different sport. So for you, Jakey, it's football. For the rest of the audience, it could be soccer. So spend most of the weekends doing that. He's into it. Allows me to go out and run around. I sort of coach the team as well. It's been a group of boys that now seen grow for the last 3 years. Really good group of families, so we enjoy actually hanging out together. So it's a bit of a caravan when we go to tournaments, but we enjoy a good laugh and a good meal together. So that's keeping us busy as well. I mean, to me, living in LA, the ocean is definitely a grounding element for me. So I get to try and go out and spend as much time in the ocean. I'll be one of those people that will go swimming in January, February, which is not as bad as it sounds for LA. And then I do enjoy cooking. Cooking is relaxing to me. I don't find it stressful. That's a very easy sort of way to wind down. I will say though that we learned about the concept of blenders and splitters in our retreat this year. I'm sort of a splitter with blender tendencies, but I do tend to break away from architecture when I go home. The books I read, I get enough information and knowledge sort of in the day-to-day job. So I like to actually get perspective. I like to go camping with my son, just change the scenery because I feel re-energized, and I actually get a lot of clarity in thinking from that. So I tend to sort of break away a little bit from the design world, the architecture world, the leadership world when I go home. So I kind of tend to dive into other things.
I'm a total blender.
Yeah.
I think it's I don't know if this is nature or nurture, but when I think that from my grandfather sort of melding, his grocery business and our whole family and friends, and to my father, and then now my mother, who are realtors, and sort of working all the time, but also, being on vacation. And it's very comfortable to me to, so I don't like this term work-life balance. I think it's like blend or meld or, but yeah, I sort of do merge them.
Interesting. As you both, Alex, as you use that term there, blender or splitter, I was going to ask, for those of us that don't know what that is, what is that? But I think you started to give a pretty good overview there, and I was going to ask, I think from your description there, Jenna, working and kind of reading leadership books on the weekend, available for for emails. Definitely does look like we've got the difference of a blender and a splitter here on screen in front of us, I would imagine. I think, and finally, on a personal insight, and I imagine that we may have touched on some of these, whether it be on the football field, soccer field, or on the baseball field. But can you share, a memorable, lasting memory that you've had within your career that's impacted you personally, or vice versa, something from your personal life that has really impacted your career?
I could share something. I guess it would be 13 and something years ago. I was pregnant with my son, and I was planning to notify the leadership that I was pregnant. And the same day I found out that I was promoted to associate principal. And I think I found that out first. And I said, thank you, that's amazing. I'm having a baby. And I was a little nervous with that, sort of conversation or segue, because for me, it was, obviously having a kid is a big change, and, how was it going to affect everything, and then getting a promotion. And the reaction was nothing but excitement for me. And I remember that. And as a leader, I think back on that, sort of the kind of reaction that a leader can have to a conversation is it's pretty critical. I think people will, sort of remember those types of conversations and those types of reactions. And so what might seem like just a kind of normal conversation to a leader could be a very foundational conversation for others. And so we need to remember that as leaders.
For me, a little different. I've sort of forced a lot of change on myself in terms of just moving, going to different things, going to different places. And I would say bigger, more risky move was to move from London to LA. And I think all of these things just have helped to embrace change rather than be fearful of it. And I think, change and evolution is sort of all around us. There is a natural sometimes reaction to just be a little defensive about where things are going and the way things change. And I think I'm more and more accepting, and I think this sort of challenging yourself, going down avenues that might be less traditional, following opportunities or that are given to you, and not saying no, but actually saying yes. I think, Jenna, you had mentioned this as well. That will open doors, that will expand your own experiences in ways that you should not be afraid of. It is most of the time will be much more beneficial than detrimental. So I think that's sort of a personal experience of just kind of moving around, changing where you live, where you work, and not being really afraid of it, and just kind of embracing it and going with it.
But I think the lessons learned with both of those stories there is, it can cross industries essentially. I think for you, Jenna, to remember 13 years later, that conversation from that question, I think speaks volumes to whoever that individual was as a leader. I'd encourage other leaders who hopefully are still listening up to this point, to take that sort of notion on board. And for yourself, Alex, again, not just specific to architecture, the idea of, grasping an opportunity with both hands, stepping out your comfort zone. I think, these lessons are things that across industries people can be looking at. And finally, guys, we are going to share this episode. Of course, we're going, we'll tag the two of you on LinkedIn. So I would encourage those who are listening to go and connect with Jenna and Alex on LinkedIn. But where else can people go if they want to learn a little bit more about Co or about the two of you? Where can we send them?
Well, first could be coarchitects.com. So our website. We're also on Instagram. So again, it's @coarchitects and LinkedIn. And yeah, I think those are
The main ones.
the main ones.
Awesome. Well, I think we will make sure that we share the website and the LinkedIn on the episode when we do share the episode. For those of you who've heard that Instagram handle there, check out Co on Instagram. I bet some interesting work as we've discussed throughout this podcast. I can only say thank you guys. I really appreciate you taking the time today. I hope those that are listening are still finding the discussion interesting. I think one big piece of these episodes is yes, to learn a little bit more about Co, but to learn about you guys as leaders as well. I think one thing that we can see here is kind of the humility and the importance placed on the group as as opposed to being that hierarchical structure. And I hope people have enjoyed listening. So I really appreciate you taking the time today, and have a good rest of your day, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.